She's 16 according to Google. Google can kick my ass. Kiss my ass. That's a very different thing. I mean, Google probably could kick my ass, but I meant that Google couldn't kiss my ass, which is an entirely different sentiment there. That better or worse? Now it's crooked? Fuck you. Fuck you, Christy. Alright, okay, so it is, in fact, the first Friday of the month, which means that it's book club night. And I have, you know what? Our book club for the night could have been many things. It could have been Gallant by V.E. Schwab. It could have been Gallant by V.E. Schwab. Or it could have been Gallant by V.E. Schwab. It possibly could have even been Gallant by V.E. Schwab. This would have only been so much better if the bookish box one had already been in. But I bet you we don't get that shit till like June. Yeah, our book for this month is Gallant by V.E. Schwab. We will be talking about the April book at the end. So at the end of the stream, I always talk about what our next book is going to be. And that's when the actual announcement will be. So at the end of the thing, we'll talk about April. But yeah, this is, I have multiple copies of this, which could tell you, it tells you one of two things. Either I really, really, really loved it, or I bought all of them before I read the book. In this case, both are true. Both are true. Are the UK editions normal size? So the UK editions are very small as well. They're just not square. So the US edition is this like odd square shape that is not going to fit anywhere on your bookshelf. And the UK edition is just as short, but it is not, it's not a square. So it'll fit at least a little bit better on your shelf. I do really love V.E. Schwab. I gotta say, like, do I think that I swayed the book club vote? Yeah, I do. I will not shut up about V.E. Schwab. Spoiler alert, V.E. Schwab is my favorite author. So I was always really, like, I was always gonna read this, and I was probably always gonna love it. I don't even know where to start, because, like, fucking spoiler alert, 4.5 stars. I love this book. I love V.E. Schwab. I love this book. I have never read a single thing from her that was less than 4 stars. I think that she's perfect and incredible, and I just love her so much. So yes, Gallant is a 4.5 star book for me. Oh my god. I love it so much. This is in fact the third book club, the third Schwab book that we've done for book club, and she holds the top 2 spots for book club. She's now tied with Priory. Priory is now tied with Vicious, but yeah, Vicious and Vengeful are our first and second highest reviewed books. I'm curious to see if this goes just as well, because I think I loved this book. And there's a lot of reasons why I love this book, but I think there's a lot of reasons, not a lot, I think there are reasons why somebody wouldn't love this book at the same time. Like, I think this is one of those where it's not for everybody if you don't go into it with the right mindset. So Gallant is all about the vibes for me. Gallant is about the aesthetic, it's about the vibes, it's about, like, the actual writing style. Like, literally just fucking inject the writing of this book straight into my goddamn veins. I mean, holy shit. So I actually went through, and the first time that I read this, oh, that's the other thing, I read it twice. So this book came out on March 1st, which means, and like, I wasn't gonna wait. I was not gonna wait to read this. So it came out on March 1st, and I was like, well, shit, I'm gonna read it at the beginning of the month. And for book club, I always read at the very end of the month so that it's like super fresh in my brain. What I did for this one is I read it on March 1st, and then I read it again yesterday. Anyway, yeah, I read it again yesterday because the first time I read it, I split it across 3 days. I knew that it was going to be like a spooky, like horror-esque kind of a thing, like ghost story kind of a thing. So I only read it after the sun went down, and I split it across 3 different days. And then yesterday I just sat down and I read it cover to cover in one sitting. And V.E. Schwab has said herself that this is the kind of book that is meant to be like read in one quick go. Like you just read it, you devour it all at once, and then it just sits with you. So it's a short book. It's our second shortest. I think The Lost Apothecary is still shorter than Gallant, but it is our second shortest book in book club. And then that like gray line down the middle is like 40 pages that are just a few lines each. So it's a very short book. I think the audiobook is like 7.5 hours. So it's one of those that like you could power through and read it super fast and be done in just a few hours. But personally, I think it's much better experienced if you like sit with it and like actually literally give each word the amount of time that it needs to like sit. Like her writing is just so fucking good. So the first time that I read through it, I don't know if you'll be able to see any of it, but I tabbed, annotated, highlighted, I took notes on it, I highlighted my favorite passages, I wrote all over this thing. I don't even know where to start with like talking about this book. I literally don't know where to start. What would have been nice is if I did what I did last month and I actually took fucking notes, but in my head I was like, oh, I just read it yesterday, I don't need to take notes, I just have it all in my brain. But no, I have talked around a lot of things and have not actually started talking about the book all that much because I don't know where to start. But holy fuck, this book was good. Like this book was so good. So going into it, I knew that Gallant was, or that V.E. Schwab was saying that it was essentially Crimson Peak meets The Secret Garden. And something to know about me, Crimson Peak is one of my favorite movies. So I was immediately sold. I was thinking gothic haunted house. I originally was thinking like gothic romance, and then she said it was like YA-ish. And I was like, okay, so you got the gothic haunted house kind of things. You have The Secret Garden, so like the other world kind of a thing. And I knew pretty quickly, like as soon as she was talking about it, I was like, this is going to be right up my alley. And then she also was saying early on in talking about the book that she and her publisher had a lot of issues trying to figure out where to shelve this, because it's not quite middle grade, it's not quite YA, it's not quite adult, it's a little bit of all of them, it's a little bit of none of them, and it doesn't particularly fit super well anyway, like any of those places. Like it could fit in any of them, which I think ended up being very true. Like there's nothing about this book that screams a certain age range. I think Olivia is 14, so I think that's probably why the decision was eventually made to put it in YA. But like it really could go anywhere. There were some moments that felt too dark to be middle grade. Exactly. Yeah, like it's like I've read her middle grade, or some of her middle grade stuff. I read all of her City of Ghosts books. This is not that. Like it doesn't feel like that at all. If you go on Goodreads, I think one of the top reviews, like somebody is very annoyedly saying, this is definitely a middle grade book, but, and I'm like, no, it's not. Like, no, it's not. Like, it's not really like anything. It just is. It's just Gallant. And so I think not having to hold herself to a specific age range, not having to hold herself to a specific genre. She also talks about how, and she was discussing this a lot lately, how she doesn't really write for a singular audience. So like she has I think this is her 21st published book. And like she doesn't necessarily write for one singular audience. So if you like one V.E. Schwab book, it's never a guarantee that you're gonna like the next one that she puts out, unless you're me and you just love everything she puts out. But like if you really, really loved Vicious and Vengeful and that's like your favorite thing and that's what you want from her, you may not love Gallant if you go in expecting that. Or even the same with like Shades of Magic. If you go in looking for that and then you get Gallant, you're not going to get the same thing twice. Which for me, I also like love in her writing. Like you're going to get a lot of different things out of her. This is just going to be the hour of me gushing about V.E. Schwab and how much I love her and how much I love her writing. I just love it so much. So, again, I keep talking around things and not actually talking about it. So, one of the interesting things on that note is that my friend Jason has had a not great time with V.E. Schwab books in the past. We were just talking about this the other day. He tried Shades of Magic twice. He read it a long time ago, and then I think he tried to read it again last year. And he gave it both times. He gave it 2 stars. Oh, that hurt me just to say. It literally just, it did not feel good. It did not feel good to say that. He gave it 2 stars both times, and I think he's tried, I can't remember what else he's tried, but I think he's tried other Schwab books before, and he said this is the first one that he has really, really liked. Did I kill him? No, we were over video chat. It was not possible. So, but of the things that he's tried from V.E. Schwab that he hasn't liked in the past, he really, really loved this one. And again, I think that's just like a way for, or a way to illustrate that, like, she has range. She has range. So just because you don't like something from her doesn't mean that you're not going to like something else. He has not tried Addie yet. And he knows, I'm sure, that if he doesn't like it, he's not allowed to tell me. So yeah, I think the thing that tends to hold all of her books together is her, not even necessarily her writing style, because like the style of Gallant is very different from the style of Shades of Magic, but like the almost cadence of her writing and the pacing of her writing. So her writing tends to be slower. I think the most common complaint about V.E. Schwab's writing from people that don't enjoy it is that it's too slow, especially in the beginning. And that's just how she writes. Like, it's just her style. The first third of the book is pretty slow before things start to pick up. I really like that. I was attached to it from the beginning, so like it's never been an issue for me. And then with Gallant, it's not what I would call slow, but it's consistently like level through the whole thing, and then it kind of picks up a lot at the end. But it's not even necessarily about, I don't want to say Gallant's not about the plot. It's more about the writing and the actual like aesthetic. This almost feels to me like she was allowed to just show off in the best possible way. Like, she was allowed to just show off what her, like, how her brain works and what she writes about, and like how, like, the actual diction and the connotation and the way that her mind thinks and the way that, like, she, I don't know, just the way that she words things. The writing in this is fucking gorgeous. Like, every one of the goddamn yellow tabs I have in this was, usually if I tab quotes that I like or parts that I like, there end up being like a handful maybe through the whole book. There are dozens in here. There are dozens in here. And it's just, it's so good. And this just felt like she really got to let loose. And just, it's the vibes, it's the aesthetic. It still has a wonderful story. It still has a very interesting story. It still has great characters. I loved Olivia a lot. But like, this was really just like for you to sit down and lose yourself in the cadence of the words. And it's so good. It's so good. It's so good. But that said, I think that's also potentially, if you don't go in knowing that, or you're going in expecting like a super spooky ghost story or like a super like high octane fantasy, like whatever, that might be a letdown if you're not expecting it. But again, I don't think that's a bad thing. That's one of those things that, like, I don't think it's the book's fault. I think it's an expectation on the reader's fault, or, like, thing. But, yeah, so I went in knowing that it was going to be Crimson Peak vibes, knowing that it was going to be Secret Garden vibes, knowing that, like, I like her writing. And this is just, oh, my God. It's so good. Like, I literally don't know what to say other than it's so good. Like, I can only say it's really fucking good so many different ways. This book is phenomenal. It was such a good time. Like, it's the vibes. It's the vibes. It's the vibes, and they're immaculate, and I love all of them. Olivia, I love. Olivia is, what, 14, 15-year-old? And she's a mute, but not deaf, as she is very annoyed of being asked. And I thought that her lack of a physical voice was done very well. One of the things that was, it like hurt to see her grapple with, and one of the things that was annoying as a reader, like, not even in like I was annoyed at her, I was annoyed for her, I was annoyed with her, was the instances wherein she will start to sign something and somebody will just turn away from her. So Matthew does it, Edgar does it, the matrons do it, where like she's trying to communicate with somebody and they will literally just physically turn away from her, and she's so annoyed because they can. And so like, yeah, the scene where she gets really annoyed and she just smashes a vase, because it's basically her yelling, shut the fuck up, listen to me, speak to me, I'm standing right here. I really liked. She felt very real. Like, emotionally, she felt very real. This was similar to, this is not at all similar, but like character-wise and the way I felt about the character-wise is very similar to Skyward for me, because I don't like teenagers. I do not like teenagers. So when a teenager acts like a teenager, I get really annoyed by that shit. But in both Skyward and in Gallant, the character who's a teenager feels like a teenager. They feel very real. Everything that they're doing, everything that they're saying, everything that they're feeling feels very authentic, but I also don't hate it. And that's tough to do for me because I don't like teenagers. Her time at the orphanage is, I think that was paced very well. She starts out there, but she doesn't spend a ton of time there. I actually think the pacing through this book is really good because you have the chunk that she spends at the orphanage, you have the chunk that she goes to Gallant but doesn't still know what's going on, and then the chunk that she's at Gallant and she knows what's going on. And I think those three portions are paced very well. I think there was no point where, like, I was super bored. There was no point where I was, like, waiting for something to happen, which is great because in a book this short, like, things can just keep happening at a good pace, and I thought she did that really well. I've always really liked her pacing, though, so I've always really liked her anything. Like, I don't know what you want from me. You're not gonna get an unbiased review here, because I really like V.E. Schwab. She can do no wrong for me. I really love Edgar and Hannah, and I don't know if any of you guys have seen The Haunting of Bly Manor, but Hannah and Edgar, to me, read very, very much like Hannah and Owen. And I noticed it first with Edgar because there's a note somewhere in here where I was like, he is giving me big Owen from Bly Manor vibes. If you've seen Bly Manor, Owen is the character played by Raoul Coley, the chef. I can't separate the two. Like, I really can't. They in like a very good way, because again, I really love Hannah and Owen, and so Hannah and Edgar read very similarly to me. Matthew, I really like, despite him being an absolute dick, because, like, he's doing it for good reasons, and the man is just, he's tired. He is so tired, in every sense of the word. And can you imagine, like, having it in your head that all of this ends whenever the world finally decides that you can die, and then to find out there's another one? I feel for him. And he's like 17. Like, yeah, she's like, he's a handful of years older than her. Or no, I think she says several. He's several years older than her, but not quite a man. So he's like 18, maybe 17, 19, somewhere around that. He's a child. He is a child, and he's trying his best. And I fucking felt for him so much. And I'm like, bro just needs a hug. He just needs a hug. I also felt so much for Matthew. I think one of my favorite lines in the book was from Edgar when Olivia asks what's wrong with him, because he's clearly, like, she thinks he's sick, like physically ill, and Edgar says that he's just tired, but tired is a kind of sickness if it goes on long enough. And I was like, oh my god, that's one of my favorite lines in the book that I probably butchered. I know I got it wrong, but oh my god, it's just so fucking... I really should have looked through all of my notes before I got on here, but just... Edgar, I love. Hannah and Edgar, I love. Matthew, I love. The letters from her mom kill me. The journal... Oh my god. Okay, so there's two. The journal overall gives me a lot of, like, really big emotional feelings. And the first one is when you get the flashback where Annabelle, that stupid bitch at the fucking orphanage, takes it and is, like, reading it out loud to the other girls, and they're laughing at it, and she starts ripping out pages. I was ready to kill a girl. I was ready to kill a child. I don't care. Oh my god. The visceral reaction that got out of me. And then the way that Olivia gets back her. Like, as soon as that happened, I was so, like, Team Olivia, on the Olivia hype train. Fucking has no breaks. I loved her so much. I loved her so much. As soon as she's like, you know what? Not quite enough that I almost strangled you. It's really not quite enough that I almost strangled you. We're gonna make this last. We're gonna make sure that you remember this. And I, like, her little bundle of anger that she just holds inside of her just feels very relatable. Truly feels very relatable. I like her so much. I just thought everything and everyone was written very well. One of the things that I really like about this is that she never specifies the date, but you're well aware that it's sometime in the earlier 20th century. She doesn't have to tell you the time period. There's a lot of things, I think, in this book that are implicitly stated that she never has to say for you to understand. Things like the time period, things like the location, like the setting, things like that like she never has to come out and tell you. It's through context clues within the writing you can understand that. You can understand that Olivia is the only one who can see the ghouls, that the rest of her family can't see them. So, and all that is like, I think that's just a really, there's certain types of fantasy where you need a lot of explanation and you need a lot of backstory and you need a lot of world building, and there are certain types of fantasy where you don't, where it doesn't matter. Like, it's more about we never needed an explanation of why or how Olivia can see the ghouls. That was never important. All that mattered was that she could. And like, so you didn't need, you just didn't need these like overt explanations for things. And I just thought that was, I think she did it very well. I think she balances out what needs to be there and what doesn't. I would love to have seen, I don't know, I was thinking as I was reading this, I was like, I would have loved to have seen the revisions of this, like things that you're never going to see as a reader. But like, I would have loved to have seen like revisions of this, because there's so much in this book. And I don't think, like, there's not one part of this book where, like, I felt like even a sentence was extraneous and unnecessary. Like, every single thing in this book felt necessary, to the point where if it wasn't needed, it was cut out. And if it was needed, it was written in so that it fit in with something else. Like, literally every single sentence, every bit of punctuation, every word in this book felt very purposeful, felt very necessary. And it was like a total masterclass in just beautiful writing. I don't have anything. I'm just gonna keep running in circles talking about how the writing's beautiful and everything, but like it is. Not even like the chapters, but the interludes with the master of the house. Every single one of those was fucking golden. Oh my god. Every single interlude where she starts talking about the master of the house is like, let me find one. Yeah, the master of the house is not alone. The master of the house is hungry. The master of the house is angry. The master of the house stands at the garden wall. Like, every single one of those interludes. So good. Yeah. So I really like, it's just, all of it fits so well. Because she's fitting in all of this, she's fitting in Olivia's consistent main story, like her arc from start to finish, and she's fitting in what's happening with the master of the house on the other Gallant in the other shadow world, and she's fitting in the letters from her mother, and placing the letters very specifically, like you can tell here, placing the actual journal and each entry like back to back, all of them in the middle of the book. Fucking genius. Oh my god, it was so good. Everything about this is just a fucking masterclass in craft, in writing. Oh my god, I love it so much. So yeah, the characters I really love, the writing I obviously really love, and the story I really love. Like, this beautiful story of this girl who all she wants in the entire world is a family, and she gets it. Like, she gets this letter, and she finds out that the one thing that she has always wanted in her entire life is like right within her grasp. The only thing she's ever asked for. And then she spends the whole book getting it and losing it and getting it and losing it and getting it and losing it, because she gets it in a letter, and then she arrives and she loses the hope that she had because they don't want her. And all she wants, not only, she doesn't just want a family, she wants a family who wants her. So she gets the letter, she feels like she has this family who wants her. She arrives, she finds out she doesn't, because the one person who is actually her family, Matthew, clearly doesn't want her there, doesn't like her, doesn't want her anywhere near there. So then she loses it. And then she starts to get to know them, and she gets to know Edgar and Hannah, and she starts to gain them in her life. And even Matthew, they finally come to an understanding, and she feels somewhat wanted, even if he doesn't want her there. Like, she comes to realize he doesn't want her there for her own safety, because it can't end as long as she's there. As long as she, is known to the master of the house on the other side, like, she's not safe. So she gains that when she learns that, and then she loses it again in that climactic scene. Oh my fucking god. Oh my god. When the master of the house, I'm skipping way ahead, but when the master of the house brings up the shadows of her parents in front of her, and she has to see them come alive and watch them die over and over again, and he offers her this choice of like, you can have this, you can have them, they're right here if you just do what I want, and she has to physically make the choice to turn away from that. Again, the one thing that she's ever wanted. Woo! Oh my god. Oh my god, that did things to me. That did things to me, like on an emotional level, on a writing level. The way the meaning of the journal changed throughout the story, it was wild reading the same words multiple times and how different you felt each time. And that was what was so good about like where she would put each individual line. And then when you find out, what was great for me and what I really liked is when the letters come up in the middle and they're all back to back to back, and you have all of them with the letters and the illustrations. It's right at the moment where she realizes that the illustrations were her father's responses to her mother's letters. And so reading them all back to back in that way, and then reading the pictures not just as pretty pictures, but as a response to the words, and reading the letters as their own messages. Oh my god, also so good. It's also so good. I thought everything was just so good. I have a lot of thoughts about it. I have a lot of thoughts about how well this was done. I think the story overall was really, really fantastic. Realizing it's actually a love story instead of the words of a mentally ill woman was so well written. And yeah, Olivia's grown up thinking like her mother was crazy. Like she's seeing things and she's hearing things and she's talking about sleeping in ashes and she's talking about all this stuff, and then realizing that her mom wasn't crazy. That was actually what was happening to her, and that she had to give Olivia up. The one that gets me, the letter that like gives me chills every time, is the one where she talks about, I don't remember waking up, but I was standing over her and I'm worried it was not my cheek on her hand, not my voice in my mouth saying her name. And like that, oh my god, that gets me every time. Because like you can see her start to come to the realization that she is a danger to Olivia. And she didn't leave Olivia because she didn't want her. She didn't leave her because she didn't love her. She left her because she was afraid that she was going to hurt her. Oh my god. Also about Gallant, I just wish there was more about her father, and how did her mom end up back at Gallant? Like, how is her ghoul there? So as far as her father, I can see that. I think the idea there is just that he's not really the point. But I do see how like that could be more, because I have a lot of, I guess I have questions on their relationship, but again, it's all kind of stuff that like, that's not the point. Like, it's not their story, it's Olivia's story, so they're just kind of background. But I do have questions about like their relationship and how that blossomed. How long were they speaking and how long were they writing before they decided to run away together? Because it feels relatively fast within the journal because there's so few entries, that I wonder how long that took, you know, from him saving her to them running away together. And then how is her mom back at Gallant? I think that's a matter of choosing your home. And maybe that is because home is a choice. Maybe that's a matter of she went home. And even when she didn't want to be tied to Gallant, but a part of her always was. It's a prior thing. So maybe when she died, she just went back home. She just went where she was tied to. I think her mother was right in that she found herself going back to Gallant even if she didn't mean to. Yeah, so she was called back to Gallant regardless of the fact of, I think there's two ways. You could either read it as she was either called back to Gallant regardless of the fact that she didn't want to, or she did eventually choose to go home. And again, that's one of those things that I think it's totally okay to leave things like that up to the reader when it's about, like, if it was about Olivia, that would be like, I don't know about leaving it that open, but it's about her mother, it's about her father, and these other stories, whereas we are looking specifically at Olivia's story. God, love it so much. So much. God, this book was so fucking good. I know I just read it yesterday, but like, I would like to read it again. I think I'm definitely going to end up getting the audiobook for the next time that I read it. I'll probably, you know what, I'm going to listen to the audiobook in October. I'm going to get like a nice spooky mood going, and I'm going to listen to the audiobook again in October. Am I going to read this book 3 times this year? Yes. Yes, I am. At least. all that to say, I really fucking liked it. I think it was a total masterclass in writing. I think this was a great time. Like, this was just her time to shine, her time to show off, like, how her mind works and her writing style, and it was great. It was fantastic the whole way through. There is not one bit of this, because, you know, I can't stop thinking about it, because I did just read it last weekend. I did just read The War of Two Queens. No spoilers for that book for anybody that cares, but, like, I spent that entire book screaming, like, this bitch needs an editor. Like, literally the entire book, I was yelling, like, you need an editor. This isn't necessary. You don't need this. Like, you don't need this, this, or this. You don't need to be writing like this. Your writing style is not consistent. Like, I spent that whole book yelling about how it needed an editor. And then I go and read something like this, which very clearly is edited to fucking perfection. Every single thing in this feels so necessary, feels so intentional and purposeful, and like it's needed, and every sentence serves a purpose, and it just is so good. It's so good. So that's how I feel about Gallant. 4.5 stars. Why, after all that, is it not a 5 stars? I don't know. I couldn't tell you. The way that I do 5 stars, you know it when you know it, and if you don't know it, then you don't know it, and it's not a 5 star. So 4.5 stars, it is damn near perfect. It just did not scratch that 5-star part of my brain, which is getting quite annoying, because we are now officially in April. It is April 1st today, and I have not read a 5-star book this year. I don't know why that's happening to me, but anyway. We have 29 responses. My God. Oh, what did I press? Also, earlier today, it was at 18. 11 of you did your reviews today. Fucking procrastinating. Okay. Okay. Alright, so. First of all, our format. Hey! Thank you for the follow. A snake wearing a fancy condom? What's a fancy? I don't want to know. I don't want to know. So, 69% nice read the physical book. We had 4 ebooks and 5 audiobooks. Narration, mostly 5 stars, a couple of 4 stars. So the narration overall, clearly very good. Narrator was amazing. The audio cues were fun. It was beautifully done. The narration was done. The sound effects, stuff is great. So, great time. Did anybody not finish? Hey, we all finished the book! Proud of us. Proud of us. Nobody did that. Okay. All right. Okay. I already feel like my throat is scratchy and I have to cough. That's a bad sign. Okay. I feel pretty good about this. I'm very curious to see if anybody, like, really didn't like it. But, all right, let's see what people thought. Okay, so mostly 4 stars and 4.5 stars. Overall, most people gave it overwhelmingly 4.5 and 4 stars. So, good. Love that. We had one person who really didn't like it and gave it 2.5. Why? A couple of 3s, few 3.5s. Why? But why? But why though? But you know what? We didn't have... Is this our first time we've never had anything low? I mean, not having anything lower than a 2.5 might be... I don't know. Have we had that before? There's usually people who don't like it. There is no 5, that's true. But yes, overall, like 80% of us, 4 and 4.5. So, I love that. That means this is probably going to be... This might be one of our... It's going to be in the top 3, probably. Because so many of them were up here. Would we reread? I can say yes, because I already have. Half of us would. 40% maybe. Only a few no's. Although I do wonder if that's a... I don't reread in general. Alright. More specifically, how do we rate the story? Mostly 4s. 5 stars. Okay, so if the story's 5 stars, I wonder what keeps it from being a 5. Couple of 2 stars on the story, a good chunk of 3 stars, but mostly, half of us at least, 4 stars on the story. On the characters, overwhelmingly 4 and 5 stars. You love to see it. We did, in fact, have another couple of 2 stars and a chunk of 3 stars on the characters. But again, overwhelmingly in that 4 and 5 zone, you love to see it. And writing style, I had a feeling almost everybody, well, I won't say almost everybody, 69% of us, nice, with a 5 stars on the writing, 1 3-star, and a lot of 4 stars. So I had a feeling it was going to be like the writing was the really, this is going to be up there as far as our like really highly reviewed book reviews. Highly reviewed book reviews. You know what I'm saying. Okay, all right, here we go. Are we ready? Okay, all right. So I keep waffling between a 3.75 and 4 stars on this one. Schwab's prose is beautiful, as expected, and I loved the atmosphere crafted throughout the limited setting. The eerie vibes were fantastic. I went into this book blind and was delighted at how much I was creeped out through the entire read. The only thing that kept this from being rated higher for me is that the story is quite simple, and with the exception of Olivia, I didn't feel there was much depth to many of the characters. I'll definitely revisit this book to try to get through it in one sitting. I read this over 3 days or so and feel like that may have affected my immersion, but still a solid, enjoyable read either way. Okay. This book was so fun. I loved the characters and the quickness of the plot. You got enough information to make the story enjoyable, but not enough to make it a slog. Definitely enjoyed the mystery of what was going on and the way the main character discovered things through exploration and the journals. She wasn't able to ask the questions for an easy answer, but she took it into her own hands to figure things out and still conveyed what she needed to the people around her. Even the throwing of the vase was a simple but great display of her personality. I've already reread it and bought the ebook so I could see the illustrations. Oh, Strider, is that you? Extremely slow until the 50% mark. I'm not gonna lie, that is one of the most common complaints of V.E. Schwab's writing. You might just not like her writing. And then it was okay, nothing that made me go wild. Apart from death. My man was a forbidden desire of mine. He kept purring here and there, and I swear I could hear it in my bones. Are you okay? Are you okay? I don't think that's how you're supposed to read that, but you know what? More power to you. I thought at one point Olivia's voice was gonna come back. Oh no, I think I actually would have been very upset if that happened. But I guess it wasn't something magic related as I thought. I grew frustrated at the fact that no one would stop and listen to what she had to say. Everyone turned their head, which I think you're supposed to. Like, you're supposed to feel like that. Also, Matthew, my heart broke a little for him, not gonna lie. Could have been longer, maybe. I don't know, but it was so slow, and this kind of felt like, oh, and still this felt like a novella. But the atmosphere was everything, I swear. There's a spider on my wall. Hang on. Don't fucking move. Got it? Alright. Stay calm. Don't move. Don't move. Okay, nothing to worry about here. You don't see me. Oh, whoa, where you going? Where you going? Where you going? I got it. I got it. I got it. I got it. It started moving, but I got it. I got it. Alright, just had to take care of that. This book was haunting from beginning to end. I've never read anything like Gallant before, and while I definitely enjoyed it, I'm not sure if it's a book I would go back to. Schwab's descriptions were captivating, and Olivia was a compelling character, but I didn't find myself caring about Matthew, Hannah, or Edgar. I think the magic was the most interesting part of the book, with the plot being there for necessity more than as the star of the book. Let me make it abundantly clear that there's nothing wrong with that. I just prefer my books to be heavy on the plot, and this book was more atmospheric. That's fair. One thing that surprised me about this book was that I wasn't bothered by the more or less one-sided dialogue. Olivia was such a strong character, and even though she lacked a literal voice, she had a strong sense of self and was very communicative when people took the time to listen. That was also something that I had a hard time communicating. Like, there's not a lot of dialogue because Olivia can't speak, but that doesn't mean that she doesn't communicate. And the way that, like you said, like, her sense of self is very communicative, and it was just very good. All in all, this book had great vibes and a great main character. 4 stars. We're on a roll here. We're on a roll here. Watch me as soon. Okay, I was gonna say, watch me as soon as I say that we get a bad one. I didn't get a lot of time to write a review this month, so here's a super short one. This book is genuinely so beautifully written. I've had a mixed experience with Schwab's writing so far. Didn't like Darker Shade of Magic, but loved Addie. Gallant was yet another positive experience, though. The beginning was just a little slow, but it improved soon thereafter. The story was beautiful and bittersweet, and the vibes were absolutely immaculate. V, is this you? It was a nice story, but nothing wow. I did not like, for me, the too long description of places and feelings and simply everything. That might be our 2.5. I mean, if you're not going in for the descriptions, like, that's the whole book. That's the prose is where it's at. But okay. But okay. Can Schwab do anything wrong? No. I loved this book. Her writing is fantastic, and the images really add to the immersive experience. I loved all the characters. Olivia being unable to speak was also intriguing and really puts the reader in a different perspective. I wanted to yell at the people along with her to tell me what's happening. I could feel her frustration and then excitement when she finds out Edgar can sign. Bro, the fucking betrayal when she's so excited that Edgar can sign, and then Edgar also will, like, turn away from her to not... The concept of Olivia belonging to both sides was very cool. I love that the ghouls were her allies. I also really liked that. My only fault with this book is the pacing. I felt the beginning a little slow, at the end a little rushed, but overall a fantastic book. Finally a Schwab book I actually liked. Fucking Jason, I know this was you. I know you're not here, but I know this was you. This book was all vibes and I was here for it. I think Schwab perfectly nailed a gothic tone, and I absolutely loved that our protagonist used sign language. The story itself wasn't anything revolutionary, but still a solid book. I'm gonna guess this was Jason. I don't think I got the atmosphere of this book. How? To me, I feel like it wanted to be a semi-horror novel, but didn't commit all the way. I never felt like anything was an actual threat into the very end of everything. Is this Aaron's? Into the very end of everything, so there was no suspense that was built. It was a little too slow to pick up any pace when it gets to the main plot, and by the time things started to happen, I kind of found myself uninterested. The main character was interesting enough to get me to continue, but as the book went on, the interest slowly faded. Maybe if the book was said more of as a series instead of a one-off, there would be more time to build upon this lore that felt very rushed to me and had a few plot holes. Overall, I think this one missed more than it being a bad book. This might be Aaron's. We talked about this. He knows. As a kid, I grew up knowing I was adopted, but no information about my biological family. And Olivia's feelings and thoughts felt incredibly authentic, and I felt seen in a way I've never experienced before. That is the best feeling when you're reading something that, like, you connect with so hard like that, especially when you don't see it elsewhere. Like, that feeling is so... I love that. I love that for you, whoever this is. The moments when she obsesses over her mother's notebook and worries about becoming mentally ill and if it's in her blood, or wonders about her heritage and where she came from, or the moments when Hannah kept calling her Graces as an explanation of why Olivia belonged in Gallant, and Olivia thinks about how this is the first time she's ever felt like she's belonged, made me tear up and gave me some childhood nostalgia. Trauma moments. Sometimes it's a little bit of both. Sometimes it's a little bit of both. The imagery and art used in the physical book were so fucking well done. In the beginning, I kept wishing I could see the notebook that Olivia spent so much time obsessing over, and then it showed up! Throughout the story, each time the notebook was referenced or artwork appeared, it changed my perspective and understanding of the world and the character's motivations. At first, we see the sad and borderline mentally ill version of her mother, but over time we learn how it's actually a love story that shows how much her parents loved her, even while they were dying or at risk of death killing them. Every time the words came up, they gained new meaning, and the way I saw the art in the notebook changed the way I saw the world. Christy, is this yours? The characters. I wanted to see more of the caretakers' lives. I do love me some Hannah and Edgar. They felt like they had so much potential that was never really elaborated on, but always were constantly teased about in mysterious conversations. Also, not the most important thing, but we spent so much time with the other orphan girls and nuns at the start that it was kind of a letdown that they never really came back later. I can see that. Like, I don't think they necessarily needed to, because I think that's an important turning point in Olivia's life. But I can see that. The ghouls! There was so much potential. Logically, I know the story was about Olivia being tied to both worlds and her choices on who she wanted to be, and the ghouls weren't the most important thing, but I really wanted more backstories. When Olivia finally goes beyond the gate, I was excited and hopeful that we'd spend as much time exploring the other Gallant the way that we did the normal Gallant. I wanted to see new ghouls, new allies, new parts of Olivia's heritage, and maybe even learn more lore about Death and his residency at Gallant. But it felt like we were rushed through the other Gallant and right back into the reality of the normal world where Olivia gives into her life as another prior caretaker. It was frustrating watching her finally find out about where she came from, and then immediately rush to lock away that part of her heritage and not find some way to embrace both sides of her ancestry. The ending and why I still ended up loving the story. When I started that last chapter and realized that V.E. Schwab and Olivia had given up on exploring the other Gallant, I was disappointed as fuck and started questioning if my time spent on the story was worth it. It wasn't until the last page, on that final moment when Olivia goes to the music room and Matthew's ghoul appears next to her to start teaching her how to play the piano. It was then that it clicked, and I immediately started crying as I thought about my favorite quote at the beginning of the book. Home is a choice. Olivia could have fled Gallant like her mom. She could have gone off into the world to fall in love or avoid her heritage, but she chose her broken family of ghouls and a legacy that might end up with her bound to a bed going mad like the other priors. It reminded me that every single fucking day, even when it's not the fun choice or the easy choice, we as human beings choose the places we call home and the people we call family, and it's beautiful. And I'm not gonna cry, that was really sweet! Overall, we really liked it. I like that we all had fun with this for the most part. Okay, quotes. I'm curious if there's like a bunch here. Okay, there's so many. There's so many. I didn't write any of them down because they're all just marked in my book. But, I fucking love this one. When people see tears, they stop listening to your hands or your words or anything else you have to say. And it doesn't matter if the tears are angry or sad, frightened or frustrated. All they see is a girl crying. I also fucking marked that one. I love that one. Tired can be a kind of sick if it lasts long enough. Safe does not mean happy, does not mean well, does not mean kind. I think I also marked that one. She knows too well what it's like when people take one weakness and define you by it. In my dreams, I am always losing you, and in my waking, you are already lost. The fucking letters are so good. They're so good. Dreams can make you hurt yourself. Dreams can make you do so many things if you're not careful. I really loved that because they kept, like, there was always that intonation of, like, the dreams aren't real, the dreams can't hurt you, and she's like, he's clearly hurting from these dreams. Olivia doesn't like to linger on these pages, in part because they are the ramblings of a woman gone mad, and in part because she's forced to wonder if that madness is the kind of thing that lingers in the blood. Oh, it's so good. This book is so good. Overhead, the dusk has somehow dropped away, the sky in inky black. There is no moon, no stars, and yet it is not empty. No, it is like a lake, a vast expanse of dark water, the kind of dark that tricks the eye, makes you see things where there are none, or miss things when they are there. The dark that lives in the spaces you know you should not look, lest you catch sight of other eyes staring back. Oh, it's so creepy! But where's that, There it is. I literally highlighted, like, half this damn page. So chapter 19 starts, it's the one I posted on Instagram today if anybody saw it. Once upon a time, Olivia Pryor was afraid of ghouls. She was only 5 when she first began to notice them. One day, the shadows were empty, and the next, they weren't. The ghouls didn't appear all at once. It was like stepping out of the sun into a darkened room. Her eyes had to adjust. One day, she dropped a bit of chalk beneath the bed, knelt down, and found an open mouth. The next, a half-formed hand drifted past her on the stairs. A few days later, an eye floated into the black behind the door. Over time, they took shape, knit themselves together from bits of skin and bone into the rough shapes she came to know as ghouls. They were the stuff of nightmares, and for weeks she didn't sleep, her back to the wall and her eyes on the dark. I think that might be one of my favorite, like, overall passages from the book. But, yeah, there's like, just so many. There's so many quotes. There's so many good quotes. Okay. All right. So we're going to take a second. We're going to figure out our averages for this book and where they fall in line with the rest. And then we will figure out our April book. So for reference, our top score is 4.32. So Vicious by V.E. Schwab and Prior to the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon both hold an average 4.32. And our second place is Vengeful with a 4.15. Now, we're going to head back up, and I'm going to embarrass myself trying to do math. Oh, it doesn't quite hit. It doesn't quite hit. Does not quite hit. So it's a 4.02. which puts it just above the Night Circus and just below Lore, which makes it our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th highest rated. So 4.02. That 2.5 fucked us. I'm gonna tell you right now, whoever you are, it's the lack of 5s and that 2.5 threw it off. But yeah, so an average 4.02. That was that. Okay, are we ready to see? Ready to see what our April read is? You guys want to know? You guys want to know? Okay, so as a reminder, our options are The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin, Malice by Heather Walter, and The Poppy War by Rf Quang. There is one more. It's Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. Sorry, Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson, but I don't actually have that one. So thank you. Plus Mistborn, which I don't own. In last place, with 15% of the vote, The Poppy War by Rf Quang. Better luck next time, Poppy War. My apologies to you. In third place, with 22% of the vote, is Pretend I Have Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn in my hands here. I don't own it. In third place, with 22% of the vote, is The Final Empire, the first of the Mistborn books by Brandon Sanderson, which means that it is either Malice or The City We Became. I will tell you that one of them has 30% or 29%, and one of them has 33%. They were differentiated by one vote for a long time. The one in second place actually held first place for a good chunk of time, and before it was overtaken. And now, our April read is The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. It beat out Malice early today. I think late yesterday, early today. It beat Malice by 2 votes. By 2 votes. So, The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin is our April read. Ta-da! Alright, I'm gonna throw you guys over to the Buy Low podcast. And other than that, I will see you guys next week for us to hopefully fucking finish Sekiro. Alright, have a fantastic rest of your night. I'm gonna jump on Discord and get the book for April posted. Have a great rest of your night, and I will see you all later.